Poker's legendary champions, next-generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Well, hello there, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today's guest on CPG has over $3.2 million in live MTT cashes, feasted in the streets of high-stakes mixed cash games for well over a decade, and took down the 2019 DraftKings World Championship for another $2 million in December of 2019, the one and only Jesse Martin. Some of the highlights in Jesse's live tournament poker career include 2 gold WSOP bracelets coming from the 2013 Deuce to 7 Lowball Event and the 2017 Limit Mix Triple Draw Lowball Event. He also has a third place finish in the 2014 50K Poker Players Championship at the WSOP and a gold medal finish in the $2,500 No Limit Hold'em event at the 2007 5-Star World Poker Classic. The man is one of those rare, well-rounded beasts who can play pretty much any and all poker variant at an exceptionally high level. Today, you're going to take a trip down memory lane as Jesse fills you in on his poker origin story, while also letting you know what he's fired up about working on moving into the future. If you've ever wondered how some human beings are able to find success in whatever field they choose to enter, this is an episode you don't want to miss. In my conversation with Jesse Martin, you're going to learn how Jesse's experience and success in poker set him up to thrive in daily fantasy sports, how Jesse has a spooky knack for making career transitions at exactly the right time, why his latest pursuit and passion isn't in the world of cards or daily fantasy sports, but a new game, day trading on the stock market, and much, much more. So now, without any further ado, I bring to you one of the all-time great mixed game crushers in the universe, Jesse Martin. Jesse, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. As I was saying in our pre-conversation, this is a late night edition. This is the latest CPG episode ever recorded. So if I go off the rails, it's because I'm about to, my mind is used to going to bed now. And sadly, people are probably thinking it's like 2 a.m., but it's like 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. You get old. I've grown out of my days of staying up all night playing cards.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my schedule is very, I work, during the day in the morning all the time now. So I'm much different schedule than my full-time poker schedule used to be. So this is kind of prime time, relaxing time for me.
Yeah. Let's cover the poker and then we'll talk about your new schedule, right? And if we get there, I think like your poker story is probably pretty long. There's probably a lot of components to it. I know that, yeah, you've been around forever. I remember playing at Commerce and seeing you in the room, wandering around playing in all the games. So tell me your career. How'd you get started in the world of poker? Like, what does that journey look like?
Just the typical rounders moneymaker journey, really. I went to Syracuse and it started in 1998, and I think my junior year, my friends, a lot of my buddy who's in a fraternity, his fraternity brothers were playing a poker game, and he brought me over one night. I've always been kind of a math guy, and I've been a little bit into gambling, but I never played Texas Hold'em and really never had played poker much, even although I felt like I always had like some sort of something drawing me to it. Anyways, I went over there.
What do you mean by that? Something drawing you to it?
For example, I used to watch poker on ESPN even before they had hole cards, and I used to bet on sports in middle school, and I used to, win my father, my father's small company. I used to win his March Madness pool every year until they told me I couldn't join anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you get kicked out of a March Madness pool when you're a kid?
My dad was the boss, and it was a small little company, and I guess they were sick of his little 12-year-old son winning the pool every year, and that he kind of kicked me out. But I mean, he said, he's like, listen, like, enough people have kind of made little comments about how you keep they don't want to compete against you, so
Yeah, you're destroying morale.
exactly.
It's a nice harbinger for things to come later down the pipe for you. But going back to poker, you said you were drawn to poker. Were you drawn to card games, all kinds of card games? Did you play any growing up?
So there was also a casino near Syracuse, Turning Stone Casino, where a lot of people actually probably got their live poker start. And my sophomore year, I had read a book about blackjack, and I had started going to the Turning Stone once a week and basically grinding comps. And like I in the end, I don't think that I had a strategy to win, but at the time, from reading that book, and maybe I did, maybe that it was not a card counting strategy. It was like a money management strategy, which, now that I'm like an experienced professional gambler, like, it doesn't make sense how it works.
Yeah.
But I did, over like the time that I was doing it, I probably took 10 trips, and I was a small winner. And I, like, at the time I was 19 years old, and I was getting all these comps. So I'd eat like a steak dinner at the end of the night, or I'd bring my girlfriend up, and we'd go do something there, with my like special, like, $40 in comps or whatever.
Yeah.
Getting from either betting $5 or $25, like, when on the big bet time. Anyway, so yeah, I was just always drawn to gambling and cards, but at my camp I played cards, and so yeah, but I had never played Hold'em, and I'd never even considered being a professional gambler, or at least not a professional card player. It was never really something on my mind. But once I started playing, I won that first little 10-man sit and go, even though I had no idea what was going on. But obviously, most of the other people didn't either. And yeah, I was hooked.
What was it about that hooked you in, since you had never considered that life before? You win the sit and go, and you're like, oh, this is for me.
Yeah, just the camaraderie, the strategy, everything about it. I loved right away. It just felt like a nice little combination of my personality, my skill sets a little bit at the time, as much as I realized that at the time. And poker's a great game. And sitting around in college with, getting to know some of the people I didn't know, it was one of my best friends, but it's a great way to interact with new people. And I felt very comfortable in that type of situation. So yeah, it was, I was just hooked from the start. And then I don't know if it was the next day, but it was certainly that week. I went to Barnes and Nobles, and probably the same place that I picked up that blackjack book. I just looked for all the poker books, and luckily I found 2+2 books right away. And some of those are outdated now, but back then that was really all you needed. If you were reading a 2+2 book and could understand it and could apply it, like, that's really all you needed to win at the time.
So after you get your books and you start studying poker, you start learning more, you're still in school. I'm sure that like at some point there was, you're playing poker, you're doing quite well. And what path do you choose, right? Do you choose a career? Do you choose gambling? Tell me what led you to that decision. What were you in school for to begin with?
Information systems technology was a major. It's actually a really good major. I wasn't that great at it. I got by, but it was just using tech. This was 2001, 2002 at the time, using technology and integrating it into business, and it was like a flagship major at the time. And I was okay at it, but I knew that I wasn't going to be a computer programmer. I wasn't talented enough, and I didn't enjoy it enough. And so I figured I'd just once I got a degree, it was a good enough degree, and I'd go figure it out in the workplace after. But I really had no plan. So yeah, so kind of fast forward to after graduating, I moved back to Massachusetts. I had a little bit of money just from playing poker at Turning Stone and wherever else I was playing. I mean, I built up probably small 5 figures just doing that while I was there, and I would go to Foxwoods, and I would grind limit hold'em at Foxwoods a couple days a week, go to Red Sox games when I wasn't doing that, and that was just out of school. My parents weren't too happy about it, but that's what I was doing, and I was beating the games, handily. I mean, I was making that big bet an hour plus or whatever it was, playing 15-30 limit hold'em, and the games were amazing. And I wasn't that good. In retrospect, at the time, I thought I was probably. I knew I wasn't the best. There was a couple of guys who were really good, but then most of the guys were really terrible. So I was just kind of sitting there grinding, playing tight, and making money, and it was amazing, really, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a decent life. How old were you at the time? What year was this?
So it was 2002. So it was before Moneymaker. Really, I when I wasn't at Foxwoods, I would play 5-10 on Paradise Poker. But I was mostly doing that just to mess around. And
you're the IT guy. What are you doing? You not playing online poker? It seems like that's such a natural thing.
But at the time, it wasn't. People weren't really taking it seriously yet. It was just slowly getting more and more. I was on Paradise. Most people weren't even doing that.
Yeah.
So slowly doing it, and yeah. As my story progresses, there will be a lot of online poker, I promise.
Yeah, we're at 2002, so we're about to have Moneymaker boom. Things kind of go crazy in the poker space. So at what point when you're grinding out, the 15-30 game at Foxwoods, do you decide like, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this? And then, when you did decide to pursue poker in earnest, like what did that look like progression wise? What were your goals? What did you set out to do?
So I had a place in Boston for a couple months, like a sublet, but mostly I was living at home, just going kind of. Foxwoods was like an hour one way, and Boston was 40 minutes the other way. And I was really doing well. I mean, for my age and my limit, I was just kind of chugging along, like building up more and more money with no expenses. And I had a friend who wanted to move to San Diego. And my parents were sick of me living at home.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, they wanted me out. I mean, they're happy to have me for a little bit. But I should, at some point you should leave.
Sure. So, they put in their 20 years or so.
Yeah. So I was ready to get out of there also, and I had a friend moving to San Diego, and I knew that there was card clubs out there. I had been to Commerce once. So, at the time, I didn't totally realize how. I knew miles wise how far it was, but I didn't realize how, if you're going to live in Pacific Beach, San Diego, you're really not going to be going to Commerce all that much.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I knew there was the Ocean's 11, which you could go to every day. So I just moved out to San Diego with one friend, and we got an apartment. They weren't a poker player, and I just started, just got out there. It was amazing. It was a great place to live. Met a bunch of friends, and I just told myself 9 to 5 or whatever it was, maybe 10 to 4 or 10 to 6. I would just go grind the 15-30 limit hold'em game, or 20-40 maybe at the time at Ocean's 11. Just do the day shift, and once my friends were off work, I'd do San Diego beach things. So that's what I was doing.
It's a pretty good spot. I mean, you can't really pick a better location for like weather and all of that. By the way, if you live in like Hollywood, you can't play at Commerce.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you live in Orange County, you can't play at Commerce because of the traffic, much less San Diego. I A lot of people have come from the San Diego area, though. I know DGAF. I think Sean Snyder as well played a bunch down in San Diego.
Yeah, no, a lot of people. Yeah, there's a Rami, and yeah, no, there's a huge list of San Diego people. Danny Fuse. Yeah, they've been playing poker down there for many, many years.
How did it go? Were the games better, worse than Foxwoods?
Games were slightly worse. It was going fine, but the big but that's when I started really playing online poker. Really after 2 months of going there, and I was doing fine, and everything was fine. I was happy, but I did start to play party poker 1530 at the time. And I still remember I used my buddy's credit card. I don't even remember why I used his credit card at this point, but he still reminds me of it. He's like, I springboarded your whole poker career. Yeah, for whatever reason, I guess my card wasn't loading on Party Poker, and yeah, I put not too much. I handed him probably $1,500 in cash, and yeah, and just started running good and from the start, and really ran that up, to almost 100,000 within 4 or 5 months, and I really just kind of stopped going Ocean's 11, and I instead of doing the 9 to 5 at Ocean's 11, I started just waking up and what was it? I think it was 8:30 to 11:30 I'd play, then take an hour off for lunch, and then play 3 more. It was just 3 hours, and that was my day. And I would keep good notes and try not to tilt, and just once my hours were up, I would just stop, and it really was great. I'd go to breakfast at this nice little place and drink my green tea, and that's just what I would do every day. And it was, at the time, the games were so good, and I was just grinding Party Poker.
Yeah, the 15-30 games on Party Poker, I tried grinding those myself. For some reason, I was never like, limit poker did not make sense to me in the beginning. I was like, I don't know. I did not understand pot odds so much. I don't think I understood equity, although I don't know people were using the term equity back then ever. But yeah, I remember the 15-30 games. I've talked multiple times on this show about the 30-60 games on Party Poker the like waking up at 4 a.m, getting on the list because it's like 70 people deep, and like waking up 7 hours later and just hoping you didn't oversleep your seat.
Yeah, I would play those games too, but yeah, because of what you're saying, the logistics of getting in, at the time, I was happy playing the 15-30, and the 30-60, while clearly, twice the limit, the games were tougher. So yeah, the 15-30 was kind of just a great grind for me. I'd played 4 to 6 tables, and
they were always going too. Like the 15-30s, there was tons of tables.
Oh yeah, you could play whenever you wanted.
Yeah, I still have nightmares about Auntie Roro, who I think I've mentioned that screen name multiple times, but I have no idea who it was. But they
what is it again?
Auntie Roro.
Auntie Roro.
They tortured me. Like I would like. For some reason, another part of limit poker, like it's so easy for me to go on tilt playing limit poker. I don't know why. It just like gets to me. But yeah, so you're grinding the 15-30. What about progression wise? Like, how were you actively improving your game back then? Because there's not a lot of, I guess there's 2+2 forums. Other than that, really, there wasn't a lot of information or education. And it seems like you're progressing and doing quite well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I have to think back to it. I certainly was very active on 2+2. I was reading hands all the time. I posted too. I was like probably a mid-tier as far as like well-known poster. Like I wasn't posting all the time, but I was in there. So definitely through that. And then I had a buddy, Matthew Samazik, who still plays professionally now. He's had some success in tournaments, and very well-known LA grinder. And him and I, even though he was still living back in Boston, we would talk hands all the time, and he was very good, very like naturally good player, as opposed to me, who I was more like 2+2, reading books, so we did well together, where his natural ability and kind of my more like studious, as much as you could be studious back then. So we would talk hands, and I just had a strategy that worked. I wasn't elite, I don't think, I know I wasn't. I mean, especially compared to what, poker is today. I just had certain rules that I went by, and, I really
You remember any of those rules?
I had a whole, I memorized all 8 groups of the Sklansky starting hands and all that stuff. And I knew exactly what I was defending from the blind, and exactly like if under the gun +2 raised, like where I was 3-betting, ace queen from, where I wasn't, flatting ace jack suited, in late position or after one cold call, or I just had it down in my mind exactly how I thought you were supposed to play Hold'em, and it wasn't perfect at all, but it was certainly more than enough to beat those games. And then I would read stuff on 2+2, and I would these guys. I wasn't really getting that creative, and these guys were, and I was like, okay, I guess I can check raise this flop, because every once in a while, and I'd start to mix that stuff in, and obviously you get some selection bias where some of the stuff is working for you early, so you keep it as a part of your game, and maybe the other
Yeah.
stuff you don't, and so I was developing that way, but also just playing, pretty strictly by the book, I guess, as much as whatever book you choose at the time.
I mean, really, like a lot of poker is just building maps in your head of how to navigate specific situations and spots. And I found that like almost any map is better than no map at all when you're just trying to figure stuff out. And so, yeah, you just had really good pre-flop maps, and everybody else kind of was awful and had no map. So like just that in and of itself is enough to generate probably a pretty big edge.
Yeah, and I would try hard, not, and most professionals, try hard, but I was very, those 3 hours, like I was in there, like I was focused, and I was taking notes, and so trying hard in poker, and not, trying not to tilt as much as possible, that goes a long way, if you're playing poker every day.
It goes a much longer way than people give it credit for. Just like playing with intensity, playing with presence in the time that you are playing, giving it everything you've got, not like watching YouTube on the side or whatever it is the kids do these days. So it sounds like things are going well. You built up a 6-figure bankroll on Party. Yeah. You're playing the 1530. Did you stick with Limit Hold'em? At what point did you start venturing to the other games?
Right. So so the next, I guess the next part of the story is I actually only stayed in San Diego 1 year, which, that's what happened. I have some friends from that I met that 1 year that I'm still friends with today. And it's kind of wild to think about that I left after a year, because it was really a great year. But I also had a lot of friends in New York City, and I was playing online poker. I wasn't really playing live much at all. And I just kind of picked up my things and moved to New York City. I had a cousin who was living there at a pretty nice apartment on the Upper East Side, and he said I could crash with him and maybe teach him a little poker while I looked for a place, and that's what I did. I stayed with him for a month, taught him a little bit about poker, and he actually started grinding like his own little. He had some side jobs and stuff, so he kind of just started grinding on the side too. And I found a place in the East Village, and that's kind of, I think, I don't know exactly when, but within that first year for sure of being in the East Village, that's when I started playing 3-6 no limit, both on PokerStars and Party Poker, but ended up being a lot more PokerStars. And that's kind of when I started learning more about poker. That's when I started getting into card runners and understanding that, following David Sklansky's rules weren't, while they could beat the 1530 game, that it wasn't how you become a great poker player, and started learning a lot more about poker. And, and felt like I was, for a little bit there, one of the better player, not the greatest or anything, but I felt like I really was progressing at that time. And I started really quickly beating. I was playing 6 tables with a HUD and all that kind of stuff, and I'd play tournaments on the side, and I was those games were amazing too, and my game selection was really good. I'd always, make sure there was someone with like a 45 PFR or higher at my table at all times, and that type of stuff. And I was vigilant about just like not playing in bad games, and I just started really just grinding, and my hourly was like, whoa, wait a second. Well, and again, the part I guess if you're listening along, you probably realize like, so we just kind of passed moneymaker, and all of a sudden like everything blew up. So now poker was crazy, and I was right there. I was already kind of in there, and I was right there to take advantage of that. So that was amazing.
Tell me about the transition to No Limit. By the way, I remember the card runners days. Like I remember watching a Townsend video, and he had Ace Queen. He was playing 510 or 1K&L, and like I I think he just like bet 3-bet with nut flush draw and overcards and said something along the lines of like, yeah, whatever. Like I have enough equity to just kind of get it all in here on the flop. And I remember thinking like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what do you mean equity? Like, let's start investigating these things. Like all those concepts just from watching Play and Explain videos of like Brian Townsend, Brian Hastings, Cole South. Those were just invaluable, I think, in that day and age.
Yeah, Cole South. I just remember because I remember he dominated. Cole South dominated the party poker no limit games. He just crushed them. So like just being like, oh, I get to now listen to like all his strategy, and I knew that he was the best. Like I played with him, and like I just remember like being like, okay, I know what to do against everyone in this player pool except this guy, and this guy I have no idea what to do. I mean, he's just so much better than everyone else. So the transition, I had played tournaments, and actually in Turning Stone, like when I was at Syracuse, the last month that I was there, there was a guy in town who only wanted to play no limit. And I would show up and I'd play 5-10 no limit. I had no idea what I was doing, but I sat there and I played tight, and I gained experience, and the game again was good enough that I won. I mean, I felt like I was a winning player, and I actually did, luckily win in those games. So I had always played a little no limit, and at Foxwoods, it's actually crazy. At Foxwoods, they used to have these nightly $140, I think, $140 rebuy tournaments, and they had them a lot. I don't know if it was every night. I think it was like twice a week. And you want to guess who the best player in those tournaments was? Foxwoods in 2001. Sorry, I put you on the spot. 2002.
I don't know.
Greg Raymer.
Raymer.
So this was before he won the main event, but he was just known as like this like tournament guru in the $140 Foxwoods nights. And yeah, so I would play those, and that was really my no limit experience. And if I knew Greg a little bit, not well at all, but he was the type of guy who you could ask him a question. Hey, Greg, I had pocket eights under the gun, and I raised, and this guy 3-bet me. What would you do there? So that type of stuff. So I always enjoyed no limit, and also that's the other thing about no limit those days. Even if you didn't play, there was a lot that was on TV all the time. So you could watch hands, you see Phil Lock and how does he play this hand, or that type of thing. So,
yeah, Amir Vahidi, those guys, what? Amir Vahidi and Kathy Lieber.
Amir Vahidi, there you go. Yeah. So sure, you're not studying, Peel Solver, but you're still. I was very immersed in no limit, even though at the time I was making most of my money playing limit. So yeah, the transition was didn't seem all that tough, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about just understanding poker strategy. And then, when you understand poker strategy at a deep level, not saying that you did back then, but you probably understood it way deeper than anybody else that you were playing against, or most of the other players, right? Which is enough to kind of just transition to play a different game, right? You have a decent theoretical background. You can play whatever against people who play really bad and probably figure out a way to gain an edge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would do some pen and paper math that like later became like, oh, that's actually a thing. Like just like 4-betting. Like I remember just like with a pen and paper being like, so if Cole 3-bets me, and he's not going to call a 4-bet unless he has a good hand, can't I just 4-bet him? And like I would just like do all this math out, and like yep, I can. So like I would start doing that a little bit, and then and then obviously the player pool was also starting to learn that stuff too. But yeah, so just kind of like grassroots, just kind of trying to figure it out, but also with like the buffer that like you just have people punting stacks left and right. So like even if so like you're getting like that value while you're learning basically.
Yeah, that like you just have your hands out and somebody will just give you some money
Exactly.
occasionally. So what year are we in now? Like this era of your career?
2004, 2005.
All right. So what happens after 2004, 2005? You're in New York, right? So
Yeah, 2004 I moved to New York. Yeah.
all right. So the New York era, what happens after that?
I was playing poker on Poker Stars, and then I would go out to the World Series for a trip usually and play only cash. Really a lot of limit hold'em still because the limit hold'em games there were good. I would usually go out to the Commerce and in February, probably most Februarys I'd go out to the Commerce because in New York City it was cold. So
Yeah.
so I would make those trips too. And then the rest of the time I was just really just grinding no limit for multiple years really, where I wasn't really, eventually I transitioned to mixed games, but the games were just so good, and I was grinding. I started playing a lot more tournaments. I played the 100 rebuy, almost every night, and I played the Sunday schedule and all that kind of stuff. But I was really just an online grinder, just trying to get better. The other thing I would do that I made money in was while I was playing 3-6 no limit, I would always be hawking the 100, 200, and 200, 400 limit hold'em tables. And I wasn't really a regular in those tables, especially early on. But whenever a good game popped off, I would just kind of get in there because I knew what I was doing, and if it's a good game and I'm making $300-400 an hour playing 3-6 no limit, so I can kind of gamble a little bit every once in a while in the limit hold'em games. So I was just kind of loving, it's kind of one of those things at the time where where I'm sure you probably had it, or a lot of people, a lot of people relate to this. Is like, wow, like this is like the golden. Well, I don't know if I knew it as a golden area, but I knew it as a good opportunity. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make $400 an hour sitting in front of my computer the rest of my life. So I might as well just play a lot of poker, and that's really what I did. I mean, I had a lot of friends in the city, and I, Friday nights and Saturdays, I would go out and all that kind of stuff, but Monday through Friday, I was in there grinding a lot, so I was just always aware of being like ready to play poker, and the fact that like this might be if I don't ever want to get a real job, like this might be my opportunity to like build up some money.
Yeah. What did your parents think once you found success in San Diego and then were being more successful in New York?
I think once it started being in New York, where I was like, okay, like I'm making real money. Look at this. Yeah, even earlier, they were always okay with it. They never, it's not like they disowned me or were like.
Thank God. Just thank God he doesn't have to move back in with us.
Yeah. My dad, exactly. My dad's thing was always like, hey, you never asked me for money. That I like that. I appreciate that you never asked me for money. There's something to be said for that. So that, and I never asked him for money. So, and then eventually, so in 2007, I want to say, I mean, I could look at my Hendon mob to make sure, but I won a $2,500 tournament in Vegas for like $240,000 or something like that. And for whatever, you know how it is with tournaments, like for whatever reason, that was like, okay, now he's like a really good player because he won a tournament. So that was a thing. And I had also won like $100,000 like full tilt, like the 1K. I won that and told them about that. So all of a sudden I'm like, grinding and also winning these tournaments, and like, oh, I guess Jesse's a really good poker player. I guess that's what he's doing,
Yeah.
I would have preferred him like going to business school and doing that, but I guess this is what he's doing.
Yeah, it's grind your tail off every day at the 15:30, building up a bankroll, and then you get all the recognition when you win a tournament over the course of like a couple days.
That's 100% how it happens. Yeah.
Yep, that's poker. So Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like you did have some visibility or at least an inkling that something like Black Friday or something, a force may come to disrupt this age of poker. And it sounds like you set yourself up pretty well leading up to Black Friday. But what happened on Black Friday for you? What was your experience like?
So yeah, so New York City, I was there for 6 years, and then 2010, I was kind of getting a little sick of New York City. And I was also I had my buddy Matt, who I actually brought up earlier, had just moved out to LA, and I had been taking some trips. This isn't answering your question perfectly, but so one of my big moments in poker was in 2008. So at this point, I was going out to the World Series every year, and I knew I knew all the poker players, and I actually had Greg Mueller and I used to take small pieces of a lot of people in the main event, because at that point, everyone knew the main event was just insane value. So if you had a bankroll, if you did well that summer, you're taking pieces of people in the main event. So I had a piece of Chino Ream, who got seventh, and a big piece of my buddy Owen Crow, who got 15th. So that was like a really big. It wasn't, I only had 7% of Chino, and Owen got 15, so I didn't have like some crazy amount of money, but it was still really nice. And then after that, I went out to California right after. I drove to LA after with that money and started playing higher stakes cash games than really I've ever played before. And I realized that the games, I mean, I knew it a little bit, but I was like, oh my God, this is almost better than online. I mean, if you can play white chip, limit hold'em, or mixed games in LA, that's a really good opportunity. So that was 2008, and then yeah, by around I was taking a couple more trips out west at the time, and around 2010, I just decided that I wanted to be in LA to play poker. And I don't want to, my wife gives me credit for having the foresight that Black Friday was coming. She thinks that I'm smarter than I am. Really, and she tells the story like that too. And it really wasn't that, but there was something in my mind. I was like, I think live poker is better for me right now. And I think, I can always play online. You can go out to LA, and obviously you can still play online all you want, but it really felt like at the time that going to Commerce and playing the white chip games was the best way to make money. One, and two, New York City. I love it, but I was there for 6 years, and you feel like you're in a different world. I really, once I moved out of there, I was like, oh wow, I was just consumed with this like one little island, and like you almost forget about the rest of the world. So I was ready to go experience somewhere different, and I'm really happy I did, because I was set up perfectly once Black Friday hit. I was actually, I was online playing 300, 600 heads up triple draw at the time, when the sites just like kind of just went down, and which was pretty crazy. And yeah, I was playing, and I kept that table open for 2 days. I think Sean Deeb has a story about that too, where he was just like playing on full tilt like April 17th, April 18th, because if you just kept the client open, you could still play. So I was like still playing for a couple of days, and I actually like didn't. I had much more money. I had a lot more money on Stars full tilt. I was more kind of messing around, and I actually had like $25,000 on there, and I ended up just losing it at that table. So I never had to worry about my full tilt money, because I lost it all after Black Friday.
Wow.
But yeah, so
So
I was set up. I was set up in LA, kind of just playing live.
yeah, you say white chip games. For the podcast listener, the chips in at Commerce are white, the $100 chips. What stakes were you playing in the mixed games, and how the heck are, like, we must have skipped over
Yeah,
something, because you're playing 300, 600 triple draw. Like,
Yeah,
where's
sorry.
the mixed game entry?
Yeah, we did skip that. Part of the reason we skipped it, honestly, is, well, I guess we jumped from 2007, but yeah, just at some point, The way I remember it, the way I tell it is, I was playing Limit Hold'em on full tilt. There was someone just, a losing player, a fun player, and and he's playing our Limit Hold'em game. And it's like, oh my god, this is crazy. We're playing 200, 400 Limit Hold'em, and all of a sudden he leaves, which can happen a lot online. And I use the search function. Where is he? Okay, he's sitting at 300, 600 horse. And I know the rules to horse. I'm sure I'm better than this guy at horse. So I sat down and played. And I think I won, I won $50,000 or something like that in that session. So I was like, okay, now I have a high stakes mixed game bankroll. Like, how do I play these games? And that honestly is how I started. And my buddy Justin had a wedding, I think, soon after, and one of his friends, he always told me about, was like a great stud player. So I contacted his friend. I was like, hey, the night before the wedding, I'll how much is 2 hours of your time worth? And this guy, his name is Paul. If you're in Chicago, you probably know who he is. Very studious guy, chess player, chess teacher, and he just set up this awesome lesson plan for me. And I still use some of the things he taught me in specifically the stud games. And then, I got lessons from Dr. Raz, who was kind of like the Raz guru back then. And I read Sklansky's Raz book, and I read Ray Z's Omaha book and Ray Z's Study It or Better book. And I just got really into mixed games and it was kind of the same thing where I wasn't great at the time, but I was good enough to beat the online games. And honestly, luckily I had that session because I really treated that money, at least mentally. I was like, this is found money. I'm going to try to grind it up in mixed games. And,
how was the experience of playing the mixed games, switching from Limit Hold'em, just playing all these different formats of poker? Was it more enjoyable?
Yeah, in the end, I ended up, now I'm a mixed game. That's my thing. I'm a mixed game guy. And yeah, it is more enjoyable. And I love the stud games. I still kind of think the stud games are the most fun games. And it's the type of thing where, at least back then, and still now a little bit, where less now because people just are getting really, really good at all the games. But if you're just solid at all the games and you kind of know what your strategy is in all the games, you're going to have a nice edge at almost any table, as long as you know the games. And yeah, I enjoyed everything about it, just switching between the games and all that comes with it. Yeah, I really, especially those games. As it got more into the Ducey and then all the different names of Razdacy and all that different stuff. I would play all that stuff too, but my favorite is just stud, Study It or Better, horse, maybe throw in triple draw, and just kind of the classic mixed game stuff.
You mentioned your wife saying that you were kind of prescient in moving to LA and because of Black Friday, but yeah, it sounds like you've managed to stay kind of one step ahead of the curve, at each step. You switch to no limit when the game's really good, and then you switch to mixed games when the game's really good, and then you switch to live poker in LA back when live poker in LA was really, really good. Yeah. So yeah, after Black Friday, after you're playing these white chip games in LA, how long did that last? What were the average stakes, and what did your career kind of look like?
You're saying in Los Angeles?
Yeah, in LA.
Yeah. I was probably the highest volume, mostly mix or limit hold'em player from 2011 to 2018, really, almost right up to the pandemic. I would just play a lot. Same thing. I would go there. It was really a Monday through Friday thing. That's kind of always how I've done poker. I guess Sundays I used to play the tournaments a bit, but just Monday morning, wake up, go to the Commerce. Usually I would know what game was going, but if not, I just, I was one thing with me, which, I take pride in, but it doesn't make me as skillful or as, brilliant as like someone like Haxton who will just play any game, against anyone type thing. But I was always very aware of like where the best value games are, kind of like you just described. I, played no limit, played mixed game. So I would just get on a schedule that I knew that the games were going to be really good. And I knew that if I got in at, maybe if I woke up early and beat the traffic and I got in at 7 a.m. for the 300, 600 game that's been going all night, like I'm going to get a seat, and then hopefully the game goes through the day, and then I'm sitting there fresh whenever, half the tables through the night, and then more people show up. So just honestly, many years of that type of grinding, Monday through Friday, showing up at the Commerce, getting on the board early, getting in good games, it didn't take much, especially in the beginning, the first few years, to get into good games. I would stay at the Commerce a lot, even though I had a place in Santa Monica. I just, if I play late and I knew that the game might run all night, stay at the Commerce, wake up in the morning, walk downstairs, play around, go up and shower, and just keep grinding. I really was just playing a lot of poker.
When you say high volume, how many hours a week you think you're averaging?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy, and maybe it wasn't the highest volume, but as far as like a professional, probably 8 to 10 hours a day, most days, type
5 days
thing.
a week.
But I certainly would, I also have as do a lot of LA players from that area. I have many 24-hour sessions mixed in there, or 36-hour sessions mixed in there. I would play till the game broke if the game was great many times. So, I say 8 to 10 hours a day, but it might be like a 36-hour session Monday, get a room at Commerce Tuesday afternoon, sleep till Wednesday afternoon, and then like play another 24-hour session and then like go home type thing.
Yeah. The old Crown Plaza Hotel.
Yeah. It was nice for a little bit.
Huh?
Yeah, I said it was nice for a little bit. I used to think of that place very, very fondly. Unfortunately, I don't as much anymore, even though, I'm not one to really, talk down about it. But during what I view as, I was never a Commerce hater. I love the Commerce.
I've never been a Commerce. I've always loved the Commerce.
There's a lot of them out there.
I know they are. And I've never really understood it. Like I've always loved the Commerce, personally. But I haven't played there since probably 2014 or 2015, and from what I've heard, things have gone downhill over the past 6 or 7 years.
They have, and unfortunately, I had some chips just like sitting at my desk during the whole pandemic. I had some Commerce chips. So finally, like a couple months ago, I went there and I cashed them in, and anyway, it was a little desolate there, and they had started moving some of the gambling tables into the high stakes poker. I think actually that whole high stakes poker area, as far as I know, is not in existence anymore. There is like still that back area with tons of poker tables, and that's where I assume the high stakes games would be if there are any. But yeah, it's not. It has changed, and the pandemic accelerated that, unfortunately.
Wow, that makes me sad. There's no high stakes poker.
It was a weird feeling for me, especially because I just explained like that was like my home. I'd stayed there many times, and like walking through it, I was like, oh, this is much different. This is not the same anymore.
Yeah, for people that don't know, I mean, there's a lot of tables in that high stakes area, like a shit ton, and they're like pretty much always ramming and jamming, like no matter the day of the week. Like I was playing the 1020 no limit or 600 no limit at Commerce, and there was a game 24 hours a day. Like didn't matter what time at night, there's like five or six. And from what I've heard, like those games don't even get spread these days, which is sad.
Yeah, for sure. I feel very fortunate that like I was there for a lot of that, and also that that I don't necessarily want to or need to do it anymore. It's really, I got lucky, I mean, getting into poker before moneymaker, I mean, all that stuff. Yeah, I followed the right path, but I was also just in the right place at the right time a lot of times. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, give yourself some credit too, because clearly you're thinking at a high level and you've got a lot of grit, perseverance, and studiousness that served you very well when the getting was good.
Yeah.
Tell me about this. You're wearing a DraftKings, like a
It's funny, right?
pullover right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the daily fantasy sports stuff, because like this is another part of your sort of gambling journey that,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it kind of just came out of nowhere, right? It was like, wow, Jesse Martin like takes down this thing. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, well, my daily fantasy story starts back into like 2009, 2010, when Chris Fargus, you know who that is?
I don't.
He back in the day, he was like known as like the best triple draw player, like in the early 2000s. He actually like gave me like first like 4 or 5 triple draw lessons. Like it's kind of a theme for me. Like I've always, Mark Gregorich, I took a bunch of Omaha 8 lessons from. So I've always like sought out people and taken lessons. That's really how I learned poker back then. It's not as it's still probably a great way to learn poker, but maybe a lot of people are more isolated with it. But
I think it's a great
anyways,
way to learn games that are different than like No
right.
Limit.
Yes. Although now, like, you can rig all those solvers for all these different games, and yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, so he basically gave me a phone call one time. He was like, "Listen, I'm starting a company. I think it's the type of thing that you would be super interested in. Do you want to invest in it?" It's basically he described daily fantasy sports. He's like, "This is what I'm doing. I think it has a chance to be really big. $50,000 or whatever you want to invest. Like, you're my buddy, and I think you're the type of person who might want to do this." I didn't, I called my cousin, who's this hedge fund guru investment guy, and he's like, "Jesse, don't touch that investment. It's most likely illegal. You don't need that headache. Don't do it." That's basically like what he said. He's like, "You just can't do that. You can't invest in illegal things." Fast forward, like, not to tell the story too much, but I don't actually think I would have ended up making a ton of money from that investment unless somehow I like got involved in the space and found my own way. But because I don't think that exact company, although they did launch and they sold their company for some amount of money, but DraftKings and FanDuel just ended up just kind of consuming, taking over the space. But anyway, so that was my original thing, and I actually had a bias against daily fantasy sports at the time, because like in my mind I was almost like for many years rooting for it to fail, because like, oh my god, like I could have
Yeah.
been on the ground floor of this thing.
Hmm.
And then as it went on more and more people got into it, I realized, oh, now the reason I don't like fantasy sports is because I can tell that if I do this, I'm going to be addicted, and there's no way that I'll have the same EV as I do in poker, and I just feel like it's gonna consume me. I just knew myself, and I knew it would. And then one season I just got involved. One season I just did it. It was just getting too big, and got totally addicted. And actually, kind of the same story as like some of my other stories. Just when you think about the run good, like I still remember, like I don't know if it was week 1 or week 2, but I won this tournament for $30,000. It was like a $200 tournament. I won it. I remember Le'Veon Bell on Monday night just went off, and all of a sudden, like, I'm shooting up the leaderboard, and from that point on, I was totally addicted to daily fantasy sports. So I would just play poker all week, and then on the weekends, I would just start just cramming Saturday, daily fantasy, and that's kind of what I did for a few years. Yeah, and I just got really into it. Although I still was only really I was only doing football, and it wasn't like I wasn't playing high stakes. I was playing like mid stakes, and I really just thought of it as fun. And I thought that I had an edge, and I probably did have a small edge, and just kind of grinding. And then yeah, so where does that take us? So yeah, I had years where I lost. I had years where I lost 6 figures. I had years where I won small 6 figures, and I was just kind of going along. And then I guess 2019 season, they have these satellites to the big live final tournament. It's like the main event, but the only thing is the main event you have to qualify for. So it's not, you can't just buy in, you have to qualify for the main event. And I had won, so I guess the year before, actually, sorry, I had won three of these seats, and they're high value seats. I started chasing them a little. I was doing well in poker, so I had a little extra money, and I was like chasing getting in these live finals, which probably wasn't even a plus EV situation. But I've always been I've always been really into sports, and I just loved it. So I was just playing. So the first year I actually won, 2018, I won 2 seats on FanDuel, 1 seat on DraftKings. FanDuel, I was like in second place at halftime, and like I was at the live final, and I kind of had the juice, but my stack, I had Cam Newton, and they're up 42-0 or something at half, and I was in second place up here on the leaderboard, and all of a sudden Cam doesn't even start the second half, so he doesn't even play. So I went from thinking I was gonna have a chance to win the whole thing to basically coming in 37th and trying to.
How many people are in these things? Like how many people are in these main events?
It's basically like a $60,000 to $80,000 equity buy-in, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, it's huge. And then 200 people ish. So I played in. I had 1 seat in the one that Aaron Jones won, where he won $5 million, and it was supposed to be on ESPN until it kind of wasn't on ESPN. Yeah.
What's the payout structure?
It's pretty. It's not too top heavy, and everyone gets something. It's like 15,000 for last.
Oh,
so just
wow!
like qualifying, you get something.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so it's like 2 million for first, 1 million for second. Pretty like smooth payout structure. And then so once I got that taste, my son was born in 2016, and during that time I didn't play as much poker. It was kind of especially after he was born, we kind of did the thing where we were just at home for the first, I don't know how many days, 60 days or 40 days or whatever like. There's some people have this theory that you're just supposed to stay, so whatever it is, that's what I did. I didn't play poker, and it was great. I mean, I'm not trying to, but I just don't remember the exact scenario.
Yeah.
But, while I'm home, not playing poker, not playing online poker, I, got more consumed than ever in daily fantasy. And then, a lot of the times during football season, I would play a little less poker and probably cost myself some EV through the years, but it allowed me to stay home more. So I, with my son and with my family and all that kind of stuff, and I just got really into it. And then in the end, in 2019, I had won 1 seat to the live final. I had qualified earlier in the year, and I had 1 seat. I don't remember. I probably chased more seats, but I only had 1. And as luck would have it, I came in first place. I studied. Not to say that I did anything special. That week I didn't play any poker. I was just reading every single beat writer, every single whatever it was. Really the same preparation I did the year before. And it is just this crazy opportunity where you have this chance. If you run good on one day, you win $2 million. And somehow that's what I did. I just put together the lineup that won, the game in first place. And it was really a life-changing event for me. As much as, I had money from poker, like it just something about that score was just like, okay, this is like, this extra little padding that I had. So it was amazing. It was an amazing day. Just you wake up in the morning, and if your running back gets hurt, you just make $15,000. But if like all your guys score touchdowns, you have a chance of winning $2 million. And that's just kind of what it was.
Yeah, that's really sick. And also like it eclipses your biggest poker score by quite a bit too, right? Like
totally. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a serious score. I mean, winning $400,000 in a poker tournament is a serious score. So yeah, $2 million in one day when you don't really do anything once it starts, like you're just watching it.
Tell me about the sweat. Was your wife sweating with you? Like,
So, um, I didn't. So the live finals, keyword is live. So the first one, when I qualified the year before, I went down to San Diego, which is where the live final was. And the day before, they have this whole thing set up. They have a party, and they have this obstacle course, which, by the way, I won, where you like run through all these like gauntlets, and then like Dan Marino throws you a pass, and then then you like throw a pass to someone else, and then you like go through this other course, and then you kick a field goal, and like Joe Montana like says nice job. Like those two guys were actually there. And then like there's a party at night where there's drinking and stuff. I didn't go to the party at night. I knew enough not to do that, but like that process in my mind, I was like, why do people do this? Why do people come to this? Like I'm used to poker where I have two big screens and this whole setup, and I'm studying, I got spreadsheets. And then this time I was down in San Diego on a laptop, and all of a sudden I'm playing for the most money I've ever played for, and I'm not on my setup.
Yeah.
So this next year when I qualified, I was like, okay, I'm not going to the live final. And it's kind of, I maybe shouldn't even say this on a podcast, but whatever. Now it's the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home and play. So what I did, you asked me about my wife, which is how I got into this tangent. My wife and my son went, and they were my representatives, because in the end, they can't, I don't think the sites are really going to do anything, but especially now with the pandemic. But I wanted to make sure that like everything, and it is included, like there's a hotel room and flights and everything. So it was a free trip for them, and we have family out in Florida, so they went out. And also the added benefit of that was now I have the house to myself for 7 days, and I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to worry about dishes, garbage, anything else. I just study, think about football, study football. And so I was there by myself. As the day came along, I think one friend had considered coming over to sweat with me, but in the end I was just at my house by myself, just just studying up until lock. And I ended up playing Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and there was snow in the game, and up until the last second I was like trying to figure out how bad the snow was, how bad the weather was, like, thinking about, okay, a lot of people aren't going to play them. I really do think they're the best combo. So now I'm going to get them at lower ownership, but they're going to be in the snow and all that stuff. And just kind of just going through all that by myself or on the phone with a couple of friends. And once it started, you're basically really, the sweat is you're rooting for nothing to go wrong is really what it is. Like, you don't want your starting running back to fumble. You basically just want to stay live as long as possible. And that's what was happening in the early games. I was staying live. Like, good things were happening, bad things weren't happening. So then as it goes, you have a couple players in the later games, and you're like, okay, like if this and this happens, like it's still a big parlay, but I have a shot. And just all the stuff just kind of kept happening. My backup, my cheap wide receivers were scoring touchdowns and all that kind of stuff. And
so your wife's there, like your wife's
in Miami. Yeah, but she's with my son. So it's like, she's still chasing him around. She doesn't totally understand. I mean, she can look at the leaderboard and see that I'm in like second or first or fourth. And Lizzie Harrison was like the DraftKings liaison there. And so they kind of knew each other. And she's like, hey, Jesse's got a shot. And she's like, okay, but my son's just running over there. So
yeah,
she was out there. Yeah. But yeah, so it was, at the end, like she knew I won as I did. So I was like, I called her, I was like, I won. She's like, I know, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's just what it was.
That's crazy, man. It's a great story. And it's been a couple of years, but congratulations. You still in the daily sports world. Do you get anything for winning, like any future entries or anything like that?
In fact,
besides the $2 million, of course.
No, you don't. And really nothing really came of it as far as like any of that type of stuff, which was totally fine with me. I'm still involved. And in fact, last year I won 8 seats to the live final last year. I played more, And I ended up coming in 7th with one of the seats, which was, it was still, I mean, basically I'd made like a little bit more than I would have at par, but with 8 seats, I was clearly thinking I had a shot to go back to back.
Yeah.
And I did. I mean, my one lineup, one little tweak here or there. And I don't know if I would have got first, but I had a really good shot at getting second. Anyways, so yeah, I'm in there, but it's still like last year I treated it pretty much as like my main job. Like this year it's kind of secondary, or it is for sure secondary. I'm really just doing it, cramming Saturday, listening to podcasts a little during the week, cramming Saturday night, doing my little spreadsheet, which most people would laugh at. I'm sure people have way better AI than I do, or I don't have it. Yeah. But I'm entering my lineups and I'm in there. I had a decent week one, but
the decision to enter a hand is fundamental to poker strategy. Too tight, and they know what you have. Too loose, and you're easy to run over. Pre-flop bootcamp from Chasing Poker Greatness is a comprehensive guide to locking down your pre-flop game and creating true range advantage. 8 days of guided training, over 60 optimal ranges, and access to a dedicated community of players that will push your pre-flop game from a place of weakness to your greatest strength. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. Available now.
John, I wanted to ask you why you decided to invest into pre-flop bootcamp.
Everything that you had done with me to that point, or I had heard you do, had impressed me. I loved the podcast. I accidentally ended up in the Poker Power Hour and loved that. And then I took coaching, and then you recommended the boot camp. And at first I didn't think it was, something that would be that valuable. But I was like, everything else has been amazing. So I signed up, and then it just blew me away.
And what about boot camp blew you away?
Like, it started off slow. Like, I'm learning these ranges and I'm not even understanding what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden, as I start to understand what we're doing with the 3 bets, the 4 bets, and all of a sudden it just kind of hit me. And I was like, oh my God, how do I not know this stuff? This is amazing. The more I studied them, I started to understand why they were constructed sometimes. Like, I'd be like, that's why that's like that. And that would lead to more revelations and just a better understanding of poker in general.
Do you have any interesting takeaways from your boot camp experience?
The most interesting thing about the boot camp, it's a pre-flop boot camp, but I feel like it's done as much for my post game as it did for my pre-game, just because I'm not in as many awkward and bad situations as I found myself in. When we were doing coaching before the boot camp, we couldn't get through 10, 15 minutes of tape without finding mistake after mistake. And then once we did the boot camp, it solved problems on the back end as well.
I know you've studied for 1,000 hours this year. How do you think boot camp compares to your other poker study?
Oh, it's crazy. The boot camp is probably the most important thing I've done all year out of everything. I would give anything to go back and to know that stuff 10 years ago. I can't imagine how successful I'd be right now if I had known that stuff. And I thought the boot camp was so valuable that I literally insisted you take more money from me and paid you more for the boot camp because I was blown away. I just thought the price was too cheap. And it's changed my game in ways that I can't even explain to you.
If you'd like to join the next round of Pre-Flop Bootcamp, which starts on the last Saturday of every month, head to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp to lock up your spot. One more time, that's chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp.
Yeah,
I'm ashamed to say that, like, in my data research for poker strategies and stuff, my spreadsheets look very homely,
Yeah, mine
very
does.
sad. I saw like a data analyst who like does it for a living.
Yeah.
He like showed me his spreadsheet, and I was like, "Holy shit! This is like, I didn't even know spreadsheets could look this nice."
Yeah, no, people would laugh at what I have. I mean, I have a cousin who yeah, it's funny. So he actually went to Syracuse. He's 15 years younger than me. He was actually the same major as me, but he was actually really good at it, and he still works. I pay him like an hourly rate, like just to kind of like go through my spreadsheet, or it'd be even more of a disaster. But it's really not nothing all that special.
well, I mean, even still, congrats. And
Yeah, no, thank you. It's amazing. I'm very grateful for that moment, that week, that day, all of it.
one shot too, one shot, you
Yeah.
took it down.
Yeah,
Eight, no dice.
exactly.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you haven't been playing much poker. What led to I guess the pandemic is one part of it.
Yeah.
Was that the major part that kind of pulled you away from poker, or have you just been considering for a while that maybe you want to do something else?
More the pandemic, honestly. The pandemic combined with the DraftKings thing. But yeah, so I was playing a lot of poker all the way up to the pandemic. The games were actually really good, but not as enjoyable. So the games were good, but it was more the politics that you hear about these days. So like there's private games. You have to be friends with this guy. You have to whether it's a pro who runs the private game, or a fun player who gets you invited to the private game, whatever it is. And there's usually only one game running instead of a bunch. So like if you get in a game and your buddy who's a professional doesn't, then there's like hard feelings, and it really wasn't as fun. But I was playing a lot because the games were good, and I was, positioned myself politically, not perfectly, but like enough where I was getting in enough of the games where it was worth my time and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was not enjoying it as much. So I won the DraftKings tournament December 2019, so pretty close up against the pandemic. And just pretty much in February of 2020, as everyone started talking about stuff on Twitter, I kind of just didn't really, I just kind of stopped going for a little bit, like, okay, let's see how this all sorts out. And I haven't played live poker since, and I don't really plan on playing serious live poker again for a long time. I really, while I was doing pretty well at the time, although there was stuff with loaning people money and all that kind of stuff, but I was still doing well. I was not enjoying it as much. And I live further, like you said, I live further from commerce now. And just the lifestyle, I had finally fallen out of it. I still love poker, and I don't think I'll play the World Series this year. I certainly look forward to playing many World Series poker events, throughout the rest of my life. But the daily grind, I'm kind of off right now.
So what are we doing? What are we spending our time doing these days?
So I took the DraftKings money, which I just kept in cash for a while. So first of all, so I have a buddy. I have a few friends, but really I think of one specific friend, my friend Nick, who I called him up in February. I was like, hey, my IRA's been doing really well. He had kind of helped me a little, just a friend of mine who was good investments. I'm like, but I'm thinking of just selling everything. Like, Doug Polk's on Twitter talking about how the World Series of Poker is going to be canceled. Everyone's talking about all this stuff. Like, what's my upside here? Like everything's been running up, and I've been, my accounts, my IRA is doing well. And he's like, that's not the worst idea. You're probably a lot more downside than upside. I was like, all right, I'm doing it. So I just like sold all my stocks, my IRA, like mid-February, which basically like the top of the market, like super lucky. And I just had so that was all in cash. And then I had never invested my DraftKings money. So like once the pandemic hit and the market crashed, I called I was still talking to him a little bit. I called my buddy Nick up again. I was like, so at some point, are you going to buy stuff back? I mean, I'm making it sound elementary because that's really where I was at the time. I was like, so at some point we're supposed to buy stocks again, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, he's like, I'd say pretty soon. And I was like, all right, well, like, do you mind if I like text you during the day? And like, if you find like an opportunity, let me know. And that's kind of how it started. And I just kind of I just got I transferred whatever, besides like the money I set aside for taxes, transferred all my DraftKings money or whatever I had my IRA, which, a lot of poker players have SEP IRAs, self-employed IRAs, where you can like put, it's a cool, if you're a poker player and you don't have it, you should look into it because they let you put a decent amount of money in an IRA every year. So I had done that. Someone gave me good advice when I was younger. I contributed to that for a while. So anyway, so I had some money on there and I just bought the dip, and through that, I just started paying attention. So there had nothing else to do. And I, kind of made a agreement with my wife. I was like, hey, until 1 p.m., can I do the stock market? And because during the pandemic, like we have a son, no one's going anywhere, it's full-time daycare. And I was like, give me 20 minutes to unwind after 1 and I'll take them the rest of the day. And that's what we did, for many, many months throughout the pandemic. So I was just waking up early, doing the market and then doing that. And then as the months went by, I was just learning more and more and more. And my friend Nick helped me a lot. And then I found like these, kind of, again, back to like what we talked about in poker, like the card runners thing. There's these groups in the stock market, financial Twitter, where people are charging money to give you stock advice. And I asked my buddy, who's a full-time trader in New York City, about it. He's like, no, I just assumed those were all scams. And I was like, and for whatever reason, I was like, well, I wonder if they are. Like maybe, these guys have 1,000 people. It's a great business model. They have 1,000 members. Everyone's paying them $150 a month. That's a ton of money. If they're good, they can get more subscribers. Maybe there's some value there. So
that's a pot odds model too, right? It's $150. What does it matter?
Exactly, and that's all from poker. It's just like, if Mark Greger, he was a great teacher, but if he's a shitty, Omaha Interbetter teacher, I lose $300. Who cares? If he teaches me one thing about how to play ace-3 suited, I'm gonna make $20,000. So it's
you retain it for the rest of your life. Like it has so much value.
So it was that same type of thing with the stock market. I was like, I might as well join these groups, and some of them were better than other, but through my friend Nick and then joining these groups, I felt like I had the tools to beat the market. And all of a sudden I started waking up at 3 a.m. and reading more and learning more. And all of a sudden I turned into a full-time day trader. And that's kind of what I do now. And then as the market got harder, I got really lucky again, kind of the theme of a lot of my professional life. I met this guy named David Prince, who long story short, runs a trading group, which he started during the pandemic, basically because he's just a really outgoing, nice guy, and he had just too many people messaging him, asking him questions. I had my friend Nick, who I was messaging, so he just had me, and that, even for him, we talked about, was a lot. David's got people messaging him on Facebook, Telegram, text messages, calling him, hey, you told me to buy Amazon yesterday, it's up 8%. What should I do now? He's like, dude, I gave you 8%. Like, you really have to call me, like, figure it out.
What do you want from me?
Yeah. So anyway, so he started, his idea, instead of, telling everyone to, go screw or whatever, it was, okay, I'll start my own group. And that's what he did. And so he, to me, and not to sound like a shill, because, it doesn't totally matter to me, but he has this unique group that, that without that, I wouldn't really be, the market was easy in 2020. Anyone could just buy and stocks went up. And that's really how it was. If you know the right people or you're focused a little more, you might be able to do better. But like, really, if you had money in the market, your portfolio is going to go. Now it's a lot harder. And I haven't, I've done okay in 2021, but I've made a ton of mistakes. But I'm learning, and I'm learning through, basically, I mean, that's the thing. I'm learning how to actually, I'm trying to learn how to actually be a professional day trader. And I think I'm on the right path. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to, just like I took the opportunities for, you know, triple draw or whatever it was at the time, or Nolan and Hold'em. Like now I feel like my time is best spent learning this. And there's a lot of opportunity if you know what you're doing. And I guess the jury's out if, in a couple of years, I'll know what if it seems like I know what I'm doing, or if I took advantage of the opportunity, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Are you loving it? You getting obsessed with learning?
I really, really like it. Part of what I like is the schedule, even though it is a little grueling. My son is at school from 9 to 2, and I'm trading from 4 a.m. to 1. So 1 o'clock, I mean, there is stuff, I'm on the West Coast. There is stuff that happens after hours, but for the most part, you can set a few orders in, or you can miss the value of after hours. And I can pretty much at 1:10 go take a nap for an hour, and then I'm awake, for 5 hours. And doesn't mean I have to hang with my son like the rest of the day, but like, I just have all this time, in the beautiful weather of LA, and I live in a great place. And I really, instead of driving an hour and 15 minutes to Commerce, and all that kind of stuff, I'm really enjoying the lifestyle, and I'm also enjoying the trading, and learning, and winning's a lot more fun than losing. The other day I made 2 huge mistakes, and I had a bad day, and that wasn't that fun. But like today, like I made less mistakes, and the stocks that we were in were going up, and it's an amazing day. And then I take a nap, and then go outside with my son and do a podcast, and so I'm enjoying the lifestyle.
Good, man. It sounds great. I always love to hear the stories of folks that have, been chasing poker greatness and then transition into something else that they love.
And there's so much from poker that especially like last year, and maybe some of it was luck, but like so much of the risk reward of what you learn in poker has helped me in this. I've had a lot of friends who have been like, hey, like get into this group with David Prince, and I'll tell you what to do. And like, this is a great opportunity. But like, if they're not poker players, it doesn't matter if they're smarter than me, as smart as me, whatever it is, it's hard to like grasp, okay, I'm going to put this much money on this stock and hope it goes up. And why am I doing it? And, oh, well, because Jesse said it's more likely to go up than down. Like if you're a poker player, like, oh, 54% chance. All right, fine. Yeah, let's go. But like,
let's dance. Yeah.
But if you're not, it's hard to, okay, I'll just put $2,000 into it. It's like, okay, but you're not going to, it's just so like the life of taking those, small opportunities is really, especially during the pandemic where the right play was to gamble, really, really has helped me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you think about what poker is, or for the podcast listener, like it's taking very small edges every single hand, right? Like you said, a big bet an hour. Well, that's taking, you play, I don't even know how many limit hold'em hands you play live in an hour, like 35, 40, something like that.
40,
yeah. You're just taking a sliver of EV. Like every hand is just one little sliver, and that just adds up at the end of your session to your edge. And so like trading, you have a very sliver of EV, and you take it, and you just take it as many times as you possibly can. And that's where the edge comes from, I assume.
For sure. And I've also made some big mistakes, and this is where the learning comes in. Usually I'm taking advice from other people. So let's say there was a stock called LMPX, which it was an online. It was kind of like a Vroom, like an online that they're selling cars online, and they're saying, oh, we love this stock, great opportunity. So I ended up buying like a lot of shares of it. I was like, to say I had some cash in my account. I just sold something. It's like, all right, well, they love it. That's got to be 70%. Like let's pile in. The next day, it's down like 16%, and like I asked David. I was like, listen, just so I know in the future, here's how much I bought of this. You know about how much money I have. Did I mess this up, or like, or am I unlucky? He's like, you're an idiot. It's because it's like this dinky little stock that like anything can happen. So like, if I bought that much of Apple, you're either going to be up 3% the next day, or really 1% the next day, or down 0.5%. It's not a big deal. But these other, so I had to I should have probably grasped it earlier, but I had to learn that lesson that some stocks you take this amount of risk because they move up and down more. And so as I've learned all that stuff, like you can really dial it in, and there's just a lot of you can really figure out the right risk management. And someone like me or like you, like we're willing, if we know it's the right bet.
It's a blessing and a curse, right? Like,
right, exactly, for sure.
The curse is we see we think we have an edge, and we're like, all right, all in, baby. Let's pile.
Yep.
Speaking of like volatility, is crypto on your radar at all?
Definitely on my radar. It's definitely on my radar. I bought some crypto in 2017. And
remind me of 2017. End of 2017, was that the run up to like 20K and then got blasted?
I was luckily early enough where I bought, I don't know, around 3,000 or I remember I started thinking about buying it probably even a little earlier. I started thinking about buying it like 1,600. People were talking about it at the poker tables. Started eat the 100. I was like, first I wasn't like super into it, and then like I finally started doing it. I definitely lost some. I overall I did well in 2017, but I certainly like the last like one or two things I did in 2017 were like stone disasters, like just like sending a bunch of Ethereum for some IPO that like was a scam or whatever. I had a couple of those, and then I just kind of held. And then when this next run up came, I kind of just held. I didn't really sell much. I made one little trade on, added a little on. The basic story is I didn't get super involved, but I'm exposed enough that like I'm in there. But I've certainly I've had many opportunities to buy CryptoPunk at the right time and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, I've just been so immersed in regular trading, just like the U.S. stock market, that even though I see the opportunities and I'm paying attention, or I don't know if I see them, but I know there's opportunity out there. I kind of have made the conscious decision that I have enough of my net worth exposed to crypto, and I'm sure it's not optimal, but I'm in there, and I just don't have enough time in my mind to learn what the right NFT is and how to flip it and what page to look at. And, DeFi, I probably should have gotten it. Anyways, no, I'm not that involved. I know about a lot of it. I'm on a couple of text message threads and all that type of stuff, but I'm not active at all. And also like with taxes and stuff, like it just feels like such a mess to just be in there trading and stuff. And that's really honestly one of the main reasons. I just like to hold it, and hopefully it just keeps going up. And
hold and pray.
Don't create taxable events is kind of that's a theory that probably honestly kept me from buying a CryptoPunk when they were a lot cheaper and stuff. But that's kind of what I've been going with.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so bad, and obviously the exposure goes up like over the last few years in crypto, just because because the run up's almost 50K Bitcoin.
The other thing I do is there's these equities. There's GBTC and ETHE, which basically mirror Bitcoin and Ethereum on like any brokerage. So I do a little bit of that. Like, hey, I'm bullish crypto. I'm gonna add some GBTC and stuff like that. So I am kind of trading around doing that a little bit, but that's like almost just more my like day trading thing. But that is a way for me to get extra exposure if I feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah, I just know that. I mean, the poker world, obviously, crypto was like a big utility in poker. Like for me, playing online poker, I recognize utility of it because it's like, oh, I need money, and they'll just send me Bitcoin, and now I have money. I don't have to get a check from Singapore.
Well, I never really experienced that because I loved Black Friday. Like I loved not having poker in my house because like in New York City, like I just always felt like the gravitational pull to go to that computer and play. So like once I was like doing well at the commerce, it's like, okay, when I'm home, I'm not playing poker. And like, so I never really played on any of those sites, but because of that, I kind of missed out on that. What you're saying, like hands-on experience, like Bitcoin and Ethereum or Bitcoin probably, but
well, Bitcoin specifically, because it was a way to get paid, which was nice because we didn't have many ways to get paid for a number of years.
That's huge.
So tell me about this project that you're firing up. It's in the podcast space, right? It
hasn't really, it hasn't been announced to the world because it might not even happen, but I hope it happens. We just ordered the mics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just my buddy, who I alluded to a little bit, David Prince, Inner Circle Trading. He's like a very interesting guy. Has a lot of stories, super funny, but like he's also just really, really good at investing and trading, like savant level good. And he expressed interest in doing it. And like for me, like I've always like I like podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. Like I enjoy being guests on podcasts. I've always thought like my wife and I almost started a podcast together. And Shane Schlager, who's been a guest on your podcast, like I'm really good buddies with him. And I've always encouraged him to like start a new hey, like I'll be your sidekick if you like. I've always but like there's never been something that I know that I'm not going to be the number one draw. Like I can maybe be a sidekick or something, but I think David could really offer a lot of value. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for in podcasts. They want to listen to something and learn something, just like your show. They listen to, a guest and they say, okay, that's his mindset. And this, so I think he can teach and entertain at the same time. So I think we're just going to fire up the mics and put them out there. And, we're not looking to make money off it, especially in the beginning. I think we're both pretty busy, especially him, and we've kicked it around a bit, but we've taken the next step where I think we're going to throw out the podcast. So.
You ordered the mics. Now,
exactly.
Now it's a done deal.
Exactly.
I mean, there's very little downside, and yes, don't get into podcasting for the money for those listening. There are other ways to make money that are much more efficient, but I think it would be good, since you're relatively newish to the trading space, right? Like you've been in it for a few years. I assume he's been in it like his whole life or forever. You can kind of be the bridge for the listener, a proxy for where they're at to ask the questions that are on their mind. And then, he can provide all the immense value. I think that's a pretty good setup for a podcast.
Yeah, that's the vision. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you see it that way. Yeah, because I think for him, he's, I think savant really is the right word. Like, I don't think he like sometimes I can tell, I'm sure he's going to listen to this, but so I don't mind saying it in front of him, but I can tell that like, because he's so smart and so sharp that he doesn't totally get why someone else might not get it type thing. Or it's like, or he'll be like, yeah, like when I explained to you that mistake I made, he's like, well, what are you doing? But like,
yeah.
Some people, you got to learn these things. So like you said, I think like I can ask the right questions and get him on the right tangent where I think he can offer a lot of value. And then also, he was a former, I think semi-famous club promoter back in his 20s and dated supermodels and all that kind of stuff. So like he kind of has that little backstory too. And I we'll see what we can do. And I think just through me promoting it, like we'll get like a little, not that I'm some famous guy, but I have enough of a reach on Twitter that we'll get, some poker players listening to it. And I think that would be a great target audience for him. And yeah, we'll see what happens. For me, all I'm looking for is I just will love the opportunity to just ask him questions for an hour a week, and I'm going to learn from it and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. It's a great, like you said, you get like free coaching out of it, right? Like it's a no-brainer for you because you get to learn for free from somebody who's at the top of their game in their field. So yeah, man, it sounds like a fun project, and I would be happy to have both of you guys come on. I know David was actually supposed to drop in tonight, but his flight got rearranged, and so like he's in the air somewhere as we speak. But would be happy to have him on sometime in the future too.
Cool. Yeah, maybe even at the end of it. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see how we put it in. But yeah, it'll be interesting for us to see how we interact and all that kind of stuff. I know he's really good on the mic. I mean, he speaks on the mic, and one of the great things about the stock group is he's actually has a live mic. So like while he's buying, 7 gazillion shares of Facebook, like he can say, hey, Facebook hit like the 21-day moving average. I'm buying 7, or he doesn't. I'm buying Facebook, and so like it, but he's also on there telling jokes and teaching and all this stuff. So I know he'll be good at it. So hopefully I can add a little value on the side.
Well, you mentioned like the curse of knowledge, I think was what you were alluding to when you were like, yeah, dummy, why would you do that? Like, it's like once you know something, you can't unknow it. It's like somebody limps under the gun with like ace 4 off, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you do that? It's like you can't remember what it was like to not know all the things that you know. And from a teaching standpoint, that gets tricky.
Right. And he is a great teacher, but yeah, as far as a podcast format, I think I might understand what the listener, someone on my level, might be looking for more than.
And that's perfect, right? Because it like right now, so the way I think of podcasting is like I'm a proxy for my audience. And so anything that you say or anything that interests me, like I am going to interrupt and dive in deep and try to go further, right? And so like in that dynamic with you two, you're kind of the proxy for the audience. And so if he's talking and like you're bored, just jump in there and ask him a question. Or if you're curious about something that he's going to skip over, just dive in. And I'm sure that will just create immense value for your audience.
That's great advice. Yeah, no, I noticed you did that even on my intro. You kind of dove right. You're like, wait, hold on. What's that thing you just said? And dive into that more. So I like that. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and sometimes the when the host doesn't do it, it just drives me nuts. It's like, how can you not follow up on what he just said? Like you're just gonna just brush by that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I listen and I'm like, oh my God, like it's right there. Like they just alluded to something like that's very interesting and we just skipped over it. I think it's a thing that happens when you have like a question pre-loaded in your mind and you just kind of stop listening because you're trying to hold that question. But yeah, the poker player in me, I look at it like I'm just like reading a situation and finding what's the most interesting. And I love it. Like I wouldn't be in this space, I think, if I didn't love having these conversations. And so before we power down here and I totally just pass out, it's 10 p.m. No.
By the way, I haven't eaten now in 24 hours. So
yeah. Imagine how good this podcast could have been had Jesse been nourished and Brad well slept. So just a couple lightning round questions and then we'll get you out of here and bring you back on with David if you two do fire up your venture.
If that's something that you think would work, we'd love to.
Of course, man. Of course. So if you could gift all poker players one book to read, doesn't have to be about poker, what would your book be?
I guess I'm just going to say The Theory of Poker, even though I tried to think of something more creative, but I actually think, I mean, if you're saying all poker players, like when I think of all poker players, I think of like my buddies from college, I have like a lot of friends who are into poker, and during the pandemic, we used to play all the time, and I would try to teach them, but anyway, so I think The Theory of Poker is just like the nuts and bolts book, like, this is what bluffing is. This is why you bluff. I still think that book really holds up. So I guess that's my answer.
Nice. Theory of Poker. If you could erect a billboard, every poker player's got to drive past on the way to the casino. What's your billboard say?
Okay. First thing that popped into my mind. So like earlier you were talking about like focus at the table and just like you described it really well. I forget your exact words, but
intensity.
Intensity. Yeah. So it made me think of John Minetti, Angry John, And like, I learned a ton from him, just, just observing how much he pays attention at the table. So I guess the answer would just be pay attention, would probably be the billboard. And yeah, it's just, him and I, like, we're friendly, but we actually don't even get along all that well. And like, but like, I think I told him this before, like he transitioned my game, because I was just like, okay, this guy is like a huge winning player. He's, when he folds, he's watching how everyone squeezes their cards. He's not turning around and making a bet on the game, or running over and, telling a joke to Greg Mueller at the other table. He's watching what everyone does all the way down to the river, and he just pays attention. And and I started doing that for the most part, and you just pick up on so much more, and you just learn so much more about who you're playing against and about poker in general. So yeah, pay attention. That's all good.
Pay attention. We've talked about a lot of things that you've done well at, but we'll close down. What's something the listeners would be surprised to learn that you're horrible at?
Well, I'm not very good at science. I'm not really good at biology or chemistry. Yeah. So which you would think someone who's good at math, or but yeah. So biology, chemistry. I mean, I got a D in like senior chemistry. Partly because I was goofing off a little bit too. But like, I think part of it was like my teacher thought I was goofing off more than I was, because like I really just didn't get it. And like he's just like, oh, you're like, I'm not getting this, and like I didn't think he was a good teacher, so like, you're not teaching me, and like I'm trying a little bit here. So yeah, so I've always never been good at science, and just like putting, my door at my office right now, like there's like this hinge thing that I need to like fix, and like I just keep putting, so just stuff like that. I don't know if people would be surprised about it, but that's certainly what I'm not good at.
I am atrocious at all handiwork things. Like my wife actually fixes the toilet and stuff when it breaks. It's kind of sad.
My wife is better than me too. Yeah.
Like my wife's like, get the drill. I'm like, well, where's the drill? Like, I don't even know how this thing works.
Yeah.
Like
my wife has the toolkit. Yeah, the toolkit. Are you good at science and chemistry? Or
I don't think so. No, I don't think I did too hot. But math, I'm pretty good at math. And I love analyzing data. I've learned over the last few years. That's something that I never knew that I loved doing it, but I apparently do love analyzing big data. You got any projects you're working on that are near and dear to your heart, other than trading and the podcast and raising a family?
No, that's it. I mean, this podcast thing, I'm hoping will work out really well. And honestly, just this inner circle trading group that I'm in, to me, it probably doesn't even benefit me too much. So like if it just blows up and becomes huge, because I'm already in there and I'm getting all the, I can't imagine it being much better. But it's on legit changed my life. I just moved to a new house, kind of like a dream house, and like it's all because I have so much confidence that like every morning I can wake up and like beat like the stock market, which is like a pretty empowering feeling, and like you can also make a lot of money if you can beat the stock market. So that's really like my main, any project or anything I'm a part of that like I'm passionate about right now. It's this inner circle trading group. It's just a good group of people and like a lot of value added. So yeah, and I mean they're like, I mean, you have to understand what you're doing. You have to focus and pay attention, but he's literally changing people's lives. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you mentioned the shill word earlier too, and like for some reason, like the shill word on poker Twitter gets like a really bad rap. But it's like if something is valuable, then you should tell people about it if you care about it, right?
Yeah.
Like
I love when people shill. Like Brian Micon was just on Doug Polk's podcast the other day, and same thing. He was like feeling bad about shilling. He's like, I want to hear what you're bullish on.
Yeah, like
Show your bag.
I mean, I sell poker courses, right? But like, I believe that they will fundamentally improve people's poker game. And so like to not sell them, it's just, it's weird in the poker space. Like selling, it gets a bad rap, and I don't understand. If something works for somebody and provides value, tell me about it. I want to know, because like that could provide value for me.
Yeah, totally. Although, yeah, I mean, it's been, yeah, I mean, I never, yeah, anyways, yeah. For me, it feels uncomfortable to do it for some reason, but you're right.
Well, it's uncomfortable, I think, only if you don't believe in the thing that you're evangelizing. You know, if you believe in it, then it's like, whatever. It's a great thing. Buy it. I think, yeah, I was telling somebody the other day, like we have 4 cats in our house, and I have this thing called the litter robot. And I was telling them I've probably sold more litter robots than any litter robot salesman ever. Like just telling my poker player, like, you have cats? Oh, get this thing, because you don't ever have to like scoop the litter box out. And that's high value. Pay the $500 for the litter box. And like, yeah, I'm shilling for them, but like, I think it's provides immense value. So to wrap up, if the Chasing Poker Greatness listener wants to learn more about Jesse Martin on the World Wide Web, where do they go?
Maze or Bowie on Twitter. That's really my only big presence. Yeah.
Inner Circle. The Inner Circle. Is it Inner Circle Trading?
I guess. I think it's Epic. They probably could have done a better job branding. Honestly, it's. You can find Inner Circle Trading through my thing. I usually respond to them or retweet them every once in a while. Yeah, it's Epic Trades 1 is their trading group.
Epic Trades, is it the number 1?
Epic Trades number 1 is how you find them on Twitter. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool, man. And I'll try to put that in the show note.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be good.
And it's been great having you on. Been great getting to know you. And go pass out. I'm going to go pass out, and we'll reconvene in a little bit.
All right, man. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I don't think you and I really know each other that well, so it was a really pleasant. I don't know if I was surprised, but it was nice to get to talk to you.
Yeah, man. Same.
Good conversation.
Yeah, nice getting to know you too.
Cool.
Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.